probably in retrospect would be a pretty good call. Kurt, you and I are in some ways both childs of the 90s. I mean, those were formative years, some might say.
It was before grammatically they changed it to children. Yes, we were childs of the 90s.
Children of the 90s. Yeah. Anyway, I mostly have fond memories. Some crazy stuff happened. There was that first Gulf War. That was kind of exciting. That was like the first war carried live on TV. And I think they stopped school to let us know that it had started at some point. I think we even got to go and watch it on TV in one of the rooms. That was the famous shock and awe campaign, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, do you have anything that really stood out for you in the 1990s?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like greatest memories I have, but do I remember any of them kind of thing? Me and my friends kind of lived days together. That was kind of our life out in BC, like very, very hippie, very whatever. So the 90s was awesome, man. I'd happily go back and do that again.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was a simpler time. It was a more innocent time. It was the time of Seinfeld, um, George Costanza and Kramer, all that good stuff. Uh, I don't know if you remember like a couple of songs that came out, like pretty sure Tub Thumping came out, Chumbawamba in the 1990s. The reason it sticks in my head is I could be wrong, but I seem to recall that I might have been on a rugby trip in England. So that song was getting played quite a bit. I know It's a Wonderful Life by Ace of Base was kind of had its like little moment in the sun around that time. It was pretty funny, like having like a van full of big rugby dudes singing along to Ace's Base on the way to a rugby game, as you do. But yeah, good times. But that's not why you're here. You're not here to hear us reminisce about memories of the 1990s. Um, you're here to try some whiskeys. Before we do, just to quickly highlight a few things coming up on the schedule. We've got both an in-store Scotch Malt Whisky Society outturn. The in-store ones are on Friday. There's a couple of spots left for each. And then we've also got um, the virtual outturn tasting on Wednesday. Kits are ready for that. And then I think really just the granddaddy of them all, the December moment that's coming up, the full Monty of Kensington Wine Market. This is not an advent calendar whiskey tastings. Um, Still a few left. They are all ready for pickup. Harmony and the team at the store have been working really hard. Took us a little longer to get them all done than we would have liked, but they're there. They're ready to go. And thank everybody for your patience. And we'll have some fun with those tastings next month, which is only a handful of days away. It's kind of crazy to think it's almost December. Um, Kurt, anything you want to add before we get rolling here?
Nope, this is a sick lineup. Let's drink some whiskey.
Yeah. So this lineup came about because you know when's the when's the last time we did a tasting of whiskeys just from the 1990s? There might have been a family cask tasting where we got almost all 1990s, but that would be about it. The reality is, the sad reality is, we just don't see very many whiskeys from this decade anymore because it was the decade after the big industry collapse. It was really before the recovery started, and a lot of the production that was laid down in those years has been consumed over the last 2.5 decades. And as a result, we're just not seeing very much of it anymore. The prices have gone up. I think we'll probably not see that much more like dramatic growth in those prices from most brands, accepting that the stock is getting older and older, and that will eventually push it up. But yeah, we do have some cool stuff in here. Some distilleries that I know, Kurt, you and I are both fans of that are maybe not as well loved, but at older ages, things like Tomatin and Linkwood, and frankly, even the Ben Nevis. I mean, Ben Nevis for me needs to be 20 plus years of age before it ever gets me excited. And I think it's because it's a very farmy, rough malt.
Are you talking Benrinnes?
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of hit or miss. Um, but
Millstone's exciting too, man. Like we get all wrapped up in Scotch, but I think Patrick's doing some of the coolest stuff that's going on outside of Scotland.
yeah, that 96 Millstone, the 25-year-old, Canada cask, which is nearly sold out. Not surprising. We've been big fans of it. We've been pumping that one up. But we've got some ground to make up before we get there. So I'll pull up the first whiskey here, put it up. It is the Whiskey Sponge Tomatin 29-year edition number 82. We only got this in store a couple of months back, so it's relatively new to us. The Whiskey Sponge lineup has been retired. I think there's probably one or two releases we haven't seen just yet that'll still come in. But this is, one of the last 20 odd releases from the Whiskey Sponge range. So there it is. 1994 distillation, matured in, and I love this, in Angus's words, knackered old refill sherry hogshead casks for 29 years, bottled at 49.5%. So, I mean, that's the kind of tomatin I'm looking for. I don't know about you, Kurt, but like that old, knackered, tired cask, let the spirit go tropical. And I'm guessing that's what we're going to find here.
I think I've kind of had a little bit of an issue with a lot of more recent sherry tomatins because they just seem to be that really spice,
Mm-hmm.
very, very old style. This is exactly what they should be doing. It's like, this is pretty.
Mm-hmm. Oh man. I
The
noticed
note,
it for a split second and then immediately went to the palate.
I told Andrew earlier, my daughter burnt bacon out there, so everything's probably a little savory for me. So I'll take my notes with a grain of salt here. The nose on this one is really, really pretty. Palate is where it's. I think there's actually a slight disconnect with just how tangy the palate is.
It it's not going fully tropical, but there's definitely some tropical tones there, like maybe some pineapple, like charred pineapple. But I'm also getting like, tallow wax and kind of like waxed parchment paper.
I'd be hard pressed to peg this as a tomato, and I think this is probably the epitome of Angus's releases, right? With Sponge and Decadent, everything else he's done. Um, Even when they're not like the sexiest of whiskeys, they're always good and they're always different enough that they merit. This is cool. We've seen some
Mhm.
stuff from him that's way outside the box, like Better Pure and they did and stuff. This Tomatin, I think blindly, it would probably not be in my top. Yes.
I would have guessed that this was more, if I sampled this blind, more Tormore. This is kind of reminiscent of some of those 20 and 30 something American oak Tormores. So I don't know.
Especially,
Is this an American oak sherry cask? Maybe. We don't know, but it is kind of got that mix of like funky, fruity tones on it. Um, you were going to say something else there, Kurt.
probably nothing important. Really, really good finish on this one too.
Mhm.
It kind of hints that it's going to be slightly woody, but it doesn't really fall into that ring.
Well, there's definitely Kevin or Jeff asking cheese. There's definitely a hint of cheese on this, for sure.
I can see that.
The uh, the whiskey sponge tasting notes are pretty funny if you get a chance to look. There's a moderately serious version, and then there's the other one. I'll just give you the palette. I'll skip the nose. Lost 1960s Doctor Who episodes reconstructed with rare fruit, unicorn insurance, Hawking radiation, and alphabet spaghetti with vowels removed. Banjo scene in Deliverance played backwards through 30-degree energy saving wash cycle. So um, that energy saving
But
wash cycle is a good European joke because that's how most of their washing machines work. They take like 6 hours.
so if you watch Deliverance backwards, story about a bunch of hillbillies that goes on you nicely and send you on your way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Deliverance is one of those movies that you only need to see once.
There it is.
Once you've seen it, you've seen everything there is to see. It's lovely. It's got like a faint bit of sharpness to me on the palate. Um, but it's kind of like a bit wild, rough around the edges, staying with that kind of pineapple tone, dusted in pepper, like fresh ground black pepper.
Good notes. I'm a little bit into like pithy, kind of like white grapefruit pith, not pink fruity or softer
Mm.
kind, but getting a little bit of that on the
Yeah, I don't know what 1960s Doctor Who tastes like, but maybe the scarf. This might be the scarf. Um, well, that was fun. Good starter. Should we mosey on down to Benrinnes, which is not far, as the
Yeah.
crow flies?
And Andrew, we've synced up a little too much on some things, I think, over the years. Benrinnes is kind of a challenging distillery. So I'm kind of looking forward to this one.
Yeah, Benrinnes has been very hit or miss for me, but what has been a definite hit, and I got to give credit to one of our customers, Devin Kleckner, um, kind of clued me in a bunch of years ago to the 96 vintages that Signatory was bottling. We've had 4 or 5 at least different bottlings of this come in over the years. This one here is from a pair of hogsheads from 1996. Good year, Kurt. That would be well, by October of 96, that would be university time. 53.5%. Yeah, these have been fun drams, these 96 Benrinnes. We talked about this a little bit in the signatory tasting. We did the 35th anniversary one a few weeks back, where one of the things I think that set Symington apart was not that he was buying parcels of casks, lots of independent bottlers do that, but that he was holding on to them for, in some cases, decades before he bottled them. And that's what's given us the confidence over time. When we see there's another 1996 Benrinnes come up, we know it's going to be good because we've tasted all the prior casts. Like there's a track record there of similar things from a similar point in time that gives us a lot of confidence for buying. Because sadly, we don't know. Like oftentimes, we don't know exactly which cast we're going to get. We don't get to try it beforehand with a lot of these. We basically just get an Excel spreadsheet and then we got to place an order. But how's this one starting off, Kurt? I guess I got to put it up on the screen.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust my nosing right now, so I'm gonna share more on the palette. Uh,
Well, I've
kind of
written.
follow,
Sorry, go
sorry,
ahead.
I was gonna say kind of following on the last one. Um, I would never guess Benrinnes again. And there's a slight floral note on the palate. It's there on so much. I'm not getting it here
Mhm.
really, but weird. Absolutely atypical of any Benrinnes I've had. Normally, I find it um, kind of like wet burlap. I think I mentioned that before. Bung cloth, kind of musty fabric and dirty. Well,
When you
it's
get to the
cool.
palate, like this one is going really creamy, really tropical. This is, it's packing some heat, or maybe that's just my palate today, 53 and a half. Uh, yeah, Kevin says there's a hint of heather, like heather honey for me for sure on the palate. Um, Benrinnes has been, I think it's been frustrating because so many of the ones we've seen have been young. A lot of times, the best ones are either in active sherry or heaven forbid wine casks. I think we bottled an ex wine cask Benrinnes for the shop. And I think the reason those ones worked is they kind of masked those notes in the Benrinnes, those burlappy notes you were talking about that aren't great that you get in it, especially at a younger age. I think what happens with Benrinnes, it's one of those whiskeys where over time, it rounds out the rough edges. Like all the new distilleries that have been that have opened in the last decade, almost all of them are creating, even if they're heavily peated, much cleaner distillates than a lot of these legacy distilleries are. So they can have whiskeys that are flavorful and young, but not rough or sharp because they know more today about distillation than they did even 20, 30 years ago. Um, Benrinnes for me is a great example of that. Like it can be great, but only when it's older. I've had so few Benrinnes that I thought, wow, that was incredible at a young age.
I think that's an insanely poignant point. And I think we've talked about that before, where things like Port Ellen and stuff are held in such esteem for people. What we know of Port Ellen has always been so great. Like if we drank Port Ellen, would we it was good or would it just be Leland? Right? A lot of these distilleries, if they're left to do 20, 30 years in the wood, going to show really well. It might be kind of mediocre at best when they're
Mhm.
Well, but time is special. Oxidation is special.
Um, Roland would like to know the age of the Benrinnes. That coming from SUT hyphen MacBook Air. Love it. That could almost be someone's satirical profile. I believe this one is a 26-year-old. Let me just check the ball again. 26 years old. From a pair, it's not a single cast from a pair of hogsheads. But I think again, what's happening, these Benrinnes casts are getting older. They're marrying them down and maybe doing a bottling of two or more casks because they're only getting 100 or less than 200 bottles from the cask after 26 years. I have to say that's pretty typical of what we've seen from that parcel of Benrinnes. It's sweet, tropical. Um, there's some nice floral tones there to it too, but man,
I just the MacBook Air need testing. I actually thought that name was maybe like, Elon Musk's newest kid or something like that.
yeah,
It's a Hollywood kind of name.
like ET phone home kind of thing.
Like it's that trend. Isn't one of Elon Musk's kids named like a fucking barcode or something? Pardon me, but it's
Oh,
like I don't know. He's a weird dude, man. He's named his children strangely.
yeah. Well, he's probably listening to this through his vast computer network and wealth. We don't need him to drop something on us with one of his Starlink satellites.
Didn't
Uh,
mean it. No overlords.
yeah. Oh, and you know what I completely forgot about is we have some 90s trivia. I meant to ask some 90s trivia. We'll put this into the chat. Now, no cheating. Don't Google this stuff because
Jeff's favorite board.
yeah. So here's one. What did O.J. Simpson's lawyer Jackie Cochran say most famously to aid in the defense of his client? Does anyone know that? I bet you some of you guys know that one. You got to know that one. It even got parodied by Seinfeld. There we go. We got a couple already in the chat. I love it. Yeah, if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. But we'll do one more here before that. Let's see this one. What else have we got? Which 1999 film had these actors and actresses in it? Sarah Michelle Gellar, Reese Witherspoon, and Ryan Felipe from 1999. I would not have been able to answer this one correctly because I don't really care about. Wow, that was fast. That was disturbingly fast how quickly you guys got that. I don't even know if I saw it, although I think there was a famous pool scene that someone may have said you have to see this at some point in time. Who knows? Can't remember.
I see very enthusiastic nodding from Tom
Yeah,
there. So
there's some
that's
enthusiastic nodding.
the
Uh, all right, one more because my intention was we were going to do one of each of one piece of trivia before each whiskey, and we've already had two whiskeys. So, um, uh, which Disney animated movie became the first in history to be nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars? So there we go. Lion King is not correct, nor is Aladdin. Good guesses though. Um, Little Mermaid, no. Toy Story is not. Well, I guess it is. Pixar is now owned by Disney, isn't it? But I don't think it used to be. Um, I guess no one here is a fan of Beauty and the Beast. So there you go. Third whiskey here, Kurt. What have we got? We've got some Dailuaine. Another whiskey that we don't often see until it's a little older in the tooth, but it's another one that can be great. I'll put this one up on screen. We have a 25-year-old from 1997, matured in a pair of hogsheads again, 48.2%. And what's interesting, again, this is a true marriage of equals because both casks were filled on the same day, May 21st of 1997. So Dailuaine, Kurt, distillery again, we see really only from independent bottlers, very few bottling, very few official releases. Hogsheads is pretty obscure. Like we don't know if it's bourbon hogshead or sherry hogshead, first fill or refill. Although if I was betting man, I would say bourbon. probably ex-bourbon hoggy.
I think Dailuaine is the one distillery that's maybe starting to come out of the shadows a little more than most others.
Mhm,
I think you're right. I think the older stuff is showing really, really well right now.
mhm.
I think the geeks that are kind of on the cusp of things understand that Dailuaine is the place to look in a few years here. When Kleinlich was refurbed, they lost a lot of that waxy character and they shifted that profile over to Dailuaine, stopped cleaning the receivers there. So that would have been 2016, 2017. So that distillate, as it's starting to mature, should carry some of that waxiness that makes it so special. So we're right now sitting at about 8 years on that style, but give
Mhm.
it a few more, start seeing. Dailuaine is bookending us on both sides with something. What's that mean?
Yeah, I wanted to quickly check a fact on this because my recollection was that Dailuaine was one of the few distilleries in the Diageo portfolio that still have worm tubs. Um,
They might.
quickly looking here, blah blah blah. Um,
You studying the real Bible.
yeah, uh, doesn't mention it here. For some reason, I thought that because I thought Dailuaine was one of the whiskeys that they were trying to encourage that sort of meatier profile, kind of like Mortlach. I'm not really
Um,
getting it on this. Like this to me is my classic like handful of random Jelly Bellies nose, where it just smells like an assorted range of fruit candies. Maybe a little bit of peanut butter and licorice thrown in there for good measure.
Good juicy palate on arrival, and then it moves into grains really, really heavily.
Mhm,
Palate all barley, kind
mhm.
of into the tall barley kind of category. It's got some palate weight, like it could be worms, honestly.
Yeah. And I did confirm that Dailuaine does use worm tubs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think that that's giving that kind of a bit of that leathery, meaty character on the finish. But that also could be a sign that this was sherry season. Like this could be
Um,
sherry hoggies. We don't really know.
yeah. Interesting.
You're right. It is juicy up front, drying, earthy on the back end. Some nice spices. But yeah, it's got that little bit of leathery, meaty notes on there, but you don't get that on the nose. Like on the nose, it's
So
just like sweet and candied and fruity.
this finish, like after it's been in the mouth for 30 seconds or so, is very, very, very reminiscent of Glenfarclas and to me, the way they finish. Glenfarclas direct fires their stills, not doing sort of
Mhm.
I love. But all three of those whiskeys have that same sort of slightly kind of note, almost leaning into the dry, dead graham cracker, barley husk.
Mhm.
I do need to clarify something just in case I offended somebody there. When I said that about the real Bible, I wasn't referring to the Bible, I was referring to the whiskey Bible.
Ah,
He who should not be named the Bible, we refer to the malt whiskey.
yeah. I mean, shouldn't you, Kurt, remind me to tell you something that I've always thought was really funny about the photo at the back of the malt whiskey yearbook every year. I've met the
Okay.
guy who's an author. He's the author. He's a really nice guy, but the photo they have of him at the back of the book, looking at, I believe it was the late distillery manager from Bunnahabhain who's in that photo with him. Um, he looks kind of menacing. Like he kind of looks like a stereotypical World War II villain, if you catch my drift. Um, but it's so weird because it's like he's such a nice guy, but he is a big
What?
dude. Um, he
Okay.
he does look quite intimidating. So I might send him a note suggesting he put a better photo in there that doesn't make him look like he should be in that. Well, this is a 90s reference, I think. That early first person shooter video game Escape from Castle Wolfenstein. So all right. A surprise fourth whiskey, but before we do that, let's get another bit of trivia in here for you. Um, Where is my trivia list? Oh, what's the name of the colorful egg-shaped keychain, Japanese, also a Japanese children's toy that went wild in the 1990s, perhaps the late 1990s. Oh, there we go. Tamagotchi or something is an acceptable answer as well. All right, let's pull up the deets on the Bowmore. I would say this tasting was like a big part of why we did it was also just an excuse to put our Bowmore into a lineup and get to share it with everybody. So I'll put that up here on the screen for you and share the link in the chat. This is a 1997 Bowmore from Berry Brothers and Rudd, bottled at a natural cask strength of 46.1 after maturing in a sherry butt. Now, the number of bottles on this is a little crazy. It was only 98, which does raise a number of questions. Was this perhaps a cask that they split? Maybe they gave us a portion, then they gave a portion to someone else. Or maybe a portion was bottled years ago and the rest left in the cask. Or maybe it was just a bad leaky cask. We don't really know. But it was, I mean, really an honor that they offered this to us in the first place. Very grateful to have had the opportunity to bottle a 97 Bowmore. This is only the second Bowmore we've ever been able to bottle for the shop. We had a lovely one from Old Malt Cask about 6 or 7 years ago, 1996, 21 years old. So doing the math there. So it was probably around 2018 that we saw that in the shop. We had looked at some 80 Rattray Bowmores way back in, I want to say the early 2010s. 80 Rattray, which is partly owned by the Morrison family, who had owned Bowmore for much of the 20th century. I hoped that they would have some good Bowmore casks, and the ones they sent us were just dreadful. They were tired old sherry casks, but they hadn't oxidized enough. Like they were just very bland. So I just assumed after that Old Malt Cask one that that would be our last Bowmore. But here you go, 1997. Yeah, Barry's Bowmore bottled for the shop at 26 years. Kurt, what are your thoughts on this one?
I remember when we sat in your office and tried this. Oh yeah, we can't not. Absolutely. I like drinking. You like drinking Old Bowmore, Andrew. You know as well as I do. It's a absolutely magical place to be. The village, the distillery, everything. And I think when you get to try single cask strength Bowmores, it's very, very, very transportative to the smells, the everything about Bowmore. And those of you guys that have been to Dailuaine can probably relate to that. Old Bowmore is beautiful, and this comes after the age that I get a theory about, so it's kind of right in my wheelhouse. Cask a lot, obviously. We're probably biased with the store, but it's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got some of the hallmarks of that are classic to Bowmore, that gentle peat, that nice maritime note. There are some sherry tones there. They're subtle, they're not over the top. But I think what's nice about that is that it's allowed this whiskey to start to esterify and become fruitier on both the nose and palate, which maybe you wouldn't see as clearly if it had a heavier coat of sherry on top of it. That would just get lost. And I think, Kurt, we know we've talked about this before. Bowmore and sherry, like Bowmore works very well with sherry. But I think I've been most blown away over the years, especially when it's young, with just bourbon Bowmore, clean bourbon, because you allow these like bright pineapple, mango notes to kind of seep through what would otherwise get just covered by that sherry cask.
But you're probably the same as I. When you try a good Bowmore, good sherry, it is like knee buckle. Some of them are stunning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, we got to speak to how good the spirit is that they're actually making there too. I think you and Evan were there right around the same time I was a bit ago. And I think we both liked the wine cask that we tried in the vaults down.
Which is crazy, yeah.
It was crazy. It was unreal how good it was. Like when you got to bottle your own at the end of it, that's what I took.
Mhm.
That's I think you guys know me. Wine isn't my jam. It's Andrew's jam typically, but that was incredible. And it was like you could see the distillate through all of those casks.
Mhm.
Trying Bowmore in a is it horizontal, I guess, where you can try to cross a couple of wood types is absolutely.
Mhm. Well, it's yeah, it's a distillery. I think Kurt, like as much as you and I both love the place, and as much as we love the whiskeys, I think it's one of the distilleries that maybe it's fair to say frustrates us the most as well. And I mean, there's a bunch of reasons for that. Everything from the fact that they, bottle at 40 and 43% a lot of the time, or the fact that their prices have gone up, especially with like those Aston Martin releases. And they've got that new sherry range out, which I really want to sit down and work through. But like just to put this in perspective for people, like 734 is a bit pricey for a 26-year-old independent bottling. But the 21-year-old coming out in their new sherry oak range is going to be over $1,000 when it comes. Like the fact that Barry's offered this to us is still a bit of a shock to me because they could have just bottled this for themselves and sold it through their shop in London. The fact that they thought of us and gave us the chance to bottle it is pretty special.
Again, the palate is where it shines for me. It's got that little bit of lime going through it for me. Well,
Mhm.
more when it's in sherry, even if it's tame sherry, always leans into ash and lots of grape juice, lots of ash.
Mhm. And we haven't really touched on this, but there's a faint touch of it there. It's still got a little bit of that lavender that some people love or hate. It's not a lot, but it's definitely there.
It's a little bit chalky to me. I think I'm I think I'm reaching to try to find the lavender. I don't think I'm getting it.
Yeah,
Now it's wedged in my brain that I should be getting it, so I'm getting it. Makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. No,
Power, knock it off.
it is the power. It's to me, it was more apparent. It was more apparent on the nose, but I mean, it's very, very light compared to especially some of the 1980s distillate that we saw, where it could be like overpowering and over the top. Um,
And let's be clear too, like when we talk about that era being the worst for the soapiness and the FWB and the lavender, whatever you want to call it, um, the stuff from the decades after are going to be like echoes of that because those casks are going to get reused. So even
mhm.
though the most aggressive of it may have gone out, a decade ago, that cask is being reused, and we're going to see some of those floral still come through in mid-age.
Mhm. Jeff saying in February he declared this the best thing he was going to drink in 2024, and he said that still holds true. So that's pretty high praise. Thank you for that, Jeff. I think I got to find us another piece of trivia before we move on to the Linkwood. There were some good ones earlier up on this list, so um, that's too easy, too easy, too easy. How about this? What girl group released the song Say My Name, Bills, 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 and Jumpin' Jumpin' in 1999? It is not TLC. Good guess. Oh, Sammy comes through. He's crushing it. And not just because he's got that luscious head of hair that looks like he's probably been in a disco or two over the years, but yeah, he got that one, no hesitation. All right, Linkwood, 1995. So this is a Gordon MacPhail cask. I actually have to double check. This one might now be sold out. This came in, I think, during the summer. I really wanted to feature it in a tasting. So I'll go do some digging and see if it is indeed actually sold out. It's 27 years old, refill sherry butt at 54.5%. Kurt, I might lead you off with that because I'm going to do double duty here for a second and see if I can determine if this is in fact sold out.
Oh wow, I'm a little disappointed now. When this came out, I reached out to James. Uh, oh no, this is not the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, never mind. I'm gonna stop that story right now. This is not the one I'm thinking of. Um,
It's not the
this one
droid you
is
were looking for.
right up. Sorry.
It's not the droid you were looking for.
So hold on here. Is Oh yeah, yeah, it is. This absolutely is. Um, yes, yes, yes. So some of you guys probably remember, we had that 27-year-old Highland Park shop at a ludicrously underpriced number. I think it was like sitting at 400 and something. 27-year-old. This landed right after. And I messaged James and said, these notes sound amazing. This whiskey's right up my alley. And he kind of referred to it like that Highland Park, but without this and without this. And I was like, okay, well, that sounds a little more austere than I'm looking for. And I steered myself away from it and picking myself in this right now. This is a really neat liquid.
Mm-hmm. So I have confirmed it is actually still available. So if anyone is after one of these, we can still get it. We'll just toggle that back on to pre-order. Um, I
Kevin,
yeah,
are there notes
I
for
have
this
written
one?
this one up before because this is kind of that like this is that really nice like rich but not over the top sherry that you get from Gordon MacPhail quite often.
It's like modern sherry, but it seems like the perfect execution of it.
Yeah, that's just it. I mean, it's my original tasting note used the word dumpy, which occurs quite often with Gordon MacPhail releases, especially the newer school sherried ones, like our GlenDronach 2000, like this. It's new school, but it's very good new school. Like lots of fruit, lots of chocolate, leather, tobacco.
And the only knock I can throw at whiskeys like this is that you have to look at it as it's just a drink. It's the sum of its parts. But if
Mhm.
you're looking for Linkwood, it's lost. Same with our Twin Towers. Like, it's just a fantastic whiskey, but I would never guess Linkwood. The distillate is so hidden by it, I think.
The distillate, I think, crops up a bit on the palate, but I agree with you. Like, I'd never be able to pick this out blind. Um, I say this all the time, but Linkwood to me always has this like fluffy, pillowy feel, and it's something about the oils, about the alcohol. I'm not sure exactly what, but this kind of has that lifted, light, fresh air to it, even with that layering on of like effectively like turtles, like those chocolate turtles, like milk chocolate, caramel, nuts. It's
Well,
like the sherry notes are big, but they're not drowning the whiskey. But I agree with you 100% in that I don't think anyone could pull this out of a hat and say this was a Linkwood blend.
but are you going to get mad that it's not what you look for as typical, or are you just going to approach it like, damn, that's a good?
I
How
mean,
mad do I want?
for me, I just want the whiskey to be good. I think my criteria, and we've brought this up several times before, and it's a sliding scale, or there's a couple of scales that kind of interact on in a matrix together. But like, there's the price to quality, and ultimately, if I think the price and the quality are good, everything else is irrelevant. I mean, age creeps in there a bit because I'm not going to pay, even if something tastes like $1,000, but it's 5 years old, I'm gonna have a hard time paying $1,000 for it. But yeah, the this does not. If I was just jamming out for Linkwood, this is probably not what I'd be looking for. But if I wanted a nice sherried whiskey, I mean, I think this fits the bill because it's got a great balance to it. It's not too much. It's not over the top. It's quite restrained.
This is what I want, like as an after dinner. If you've had something that's kind of a bigger meal, where you're not looking for something delicate, you're not looking for a palate cleanser, you're just looking for something like relaxing, sitting around. This is what I want after.
Mhm.
And please, I have to ask, next time you say pillowy, can you do it in Cartman's voice?
Say pillowy in Cartman's voice.
Yeah.
I'm gonna I'm gonna have to practice that. I don't think I'm gonna do it off on the spot right now because I don't think it would I would do it justice. Um, Linkwood. Well, I mean, one last thing I would say. I mean, I suppose the only caveat to that rule, Kurt, is if someone said they liked Gordon MacPhail Linkwood, then I'd be like, yeah, this is like a gorgeous example of it. Because
Yeah.
I can't think of a Linkwood we've had from them that's been anything but sherried. And I think part of that is because they've always filled it in sherry because they've filled their own casks for their distillery label range, which they're not doing as much anymore, other than like the 15 and the 25. Um, but yeah, it's a gorgeous sherried whiskey, but not a typical typical Linkwood. Cartman saying pillow. I think everyone will have to play that individually. If I try to play it on mine, I think it might have an issue with the sound. But thanks, chat Jeff PT, for getting that up for us quickly. Let's do another little bit of trivia before we move on to our next whiskey. This is a tough one. Good one, though. Which city hosted the Winter Olympic Games in 1994? Those were the 17th Winter Olympics, if my Roman numerology is correct. I love these guesses coming in. Phil, you're 6 years too late for Calgary. That was 88. The correct answer is Lillehammer. So Sammy was in the right country, but in the wrong city. Russell had it down, Lillehammer in Norway. Next up is the Millstone 1996. We've tried this a few times. We've put it into a few tastings. We've tried to do our best to tell people how good this whiskey is because it is great sherried whiskey. But I think it is getting close to done. I know we've got some bottles left, including final case of this in allocation. This is 25-year-old Millstone Dutch single malt, bottled at 44.92%, if we're being precise, and distilled in 1996. There's a backstory to this whiskey, which is kind of fun. So Patrick Van Zwiedem, who's the whiskey maker for Millstone, his family has owned the Zwiedem's distillery since I think the 50s, something like that. I think his family may have distilling heritage that goes back even further than that. And one interesting little nugget about Millstone is it's on the border with Belgium. But this area of Belgium and the Netherlands has like little pockets of each country in the other country, sometimes as small as like a city block. And I know Patrick was trying to build warehousing when I went to go see him about 7 or 8 years ago, but he was struggling to get permission because the warehouse would technically be in Belgium, even though it was just across the street from his distillery. And these are weird borders that go back to the Napoleonic Wars that have just never been rectified. And I guess maybe today it's not as big a deal because of the European Union, although I would imagine the Dutch don't take too kindly to Belgians getting in the way of them just trying to grow their business. But what are you going to do? So Tom saying the email said this was 44.1%. I'm looking at the bottle shot. The bottle shot says 44.92. Maybe Evan rounded up. But then that would have been 40. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So the bottle appears to say 44.92 on it. So we'll go with that. Kurt knows. What are we getting?
This is so what Macallan wishes they could do nowadays. There's so much chocolate, there's so much cherry, there's so much like jammy fruit going on here. It's a weighty spirit until it's syrupy. The palate is gorgeous. It's like unctuous and like wet, juicy arrival. It develops beautifully. It starts to go a little bit dry at the back end, and then I get a schwack load of tropical. So that's a roller coaster. And I think the coolest thing is that there's still that hint of that Millstone DNA that's going through it. Like, Millstone always carries that little bit of like rye spice or dill or caraway or something through it. I can still get just a faint little bit of it through all the teeth. Really cool.
This is like
metric schwack, not a short.
This is a very old school sherry cask style, and there's reasoning for that. I think I was starting to go down that garden path, and then I veered off onto another one. My understanding is that when Patrick started making whiskeys in the mid 1990s, 1996 in particular, he was trying to get the same type of cask that companies like Macallan, Glenfarclas, Gordon MacPhail were using, but he just couldn't get access to them. And then he sort of somehow half accidentally stumbled upon a supply of old school Solera casks. So casks that are used not seasoned for the whiskey industry, but that actually mature sherry for drinking for, in some cases, decades. And that's why these 1996 Millstone sherry casks are so incredible, is that these are very, very old school sherry casks. They're the kind that the industry wishes they had today, and they don't. And the closest approximation is usually something like one of the Gordon MacPhail casks. But man, it is, as you said, it is gooey, syrupy, dark chocolate, lots of fruit and nuts. Reminds me of like old Armagnac. The palate, still very fruity, firm spices like cinnamon, cardamom. And it's juicy and dark and layered, but it's not so big that you can't taste what's underneath, like going back to your point before. This is one of those things that I think in about 5 years' time, people are going to be regretting not buying, because, the world will have caught on to it. And Kurt, we saw another one of these casks with the boutique 10th anniversary releases. And I remember we put it into a tasting, and it blew everything in the tasting out of the water. And I think we had 4 or 5 cases of that one, which was more than any of the others. And it basically disappeared in a week or two after the tasting, because people tasted how good it was. And then it was about a month or two after that I started getting emails saying, "Hey, do you have any more of that Millstone left?" And we're like, "No, it's all gone." And I think things like this will be one of those old school sherry whiskeys that people will be looking for in a few years' time, that you just won't be able to get. Unless Patrick has more of this laid down in his warehouse.
I hope so, man. These are
Mhm.
these are like those kind of bottlings that really, really put you on the map. They resonate for a long, long, long time, I think. I think unquestionably for me, Millstone and Cavalan, and now just because things have gotten slimmed down and slightly more boring in terms of their range, and Amber, those three are probably the 3 distilleries outside of Scotland just absolutely keep smashing.
Yeah.
They're so cool. There's so much consistency. They actually have a, a personality. They have like a profile you can look for, and all of them are executed really.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a lot of precision. Uh, cool. All right. Now for another bit of trivia before we move on to the next whiskey. What else have we got for you here? Um, it's kind of boring. Uh, this will be a tougher one. What year did Tom Hanks win the Oscar for saying life is like a box of chocolates? You never know what you're going to get. Ooh, got some guesses. Both wrong so far. Um, well, seen some 94s, 95 Oscars. That is the correct answer. So Russell's either a film buff or quick on the Google search. 1995 Oscars was the one Tom Hanks won. And then I think he won it again for what? Saving Private Ryan or Philadelphia, one of those movies. One again for something else. What do we got next here, Kurt? We've got GlenDronach.
With some trepidation.
With some trepidation. Yeah, we even had this. I mean, it's fair to say we used to be fanboys for GlenDronach. Certainly feel the brand is not shown as well as it did historically in the last 5 to 6 years, but I'm going to approach this open-minded with hope that it's a good dram. This is a cask bottled for Alberta. I believe it all came, or well, for Canada, but I believe it all came to Alberta. Oloroso Puncheon. Cask 4193, 28 years of age, 51.9%. 93 was, I believe, historically a pretty good vintage. I think we saw a lot of good 1993s, Kurt, in the early 2000s, maybe, sorry, no, in the late 2000s, the early 2010s. How's this one stacking up?
So those are legendary. We actually did tasting with more names out there in case, but at somebody's house. I don't know if you were there for this one, Andy, where we did, I think, 8 different GlenDronach 90s.
Yeah.
Because it has been such an absolutely iconic, so many special releases. Not a 72, I might add. But there's just something magic about what we talking about in 1990. I see the love in the chat already going on for this one. I think this is actually one of the pure 93s I've ever tasted, and it's still a rock star. So if that tells you anything, you can get your hands on any of those 90 casks. Talk to your friends that were buying a long time ago. Don't let them plastic they are. Just value you can and get many of these. The 93 GlenDronachs are chase.
To me, it smells like kind of OXO or like beef bouillon. I'm getting like a beef bourguignon note on the nose as well. It's quite beefy.
Almost like a little bit of mole minus the spice in a way, minus the heat, anyways, on the palate. Loads of chocolate.
It does need more cowbell. The palate's more typical, very new school, lots of leather, kind of like polished leather shoes, some nice crisp spice in there, a bit of fruit. It's lovely, it's fine. But Kurt, to your point, like, you know, we saw so many good casks come from 1993. You know, Kensington was lucky to bottle a 20-year-old from 1993 way back in 2013. I mean, I'd have to really try them side by side to give it a fair crack, but it's good. It's just, it's not, I don't know. I think like you, my expectations for this are so high, they're probably not reasonable. Like they're probably not fair.
Yeah. And I think it's, well, first of all, I'm grateful that you said you got notes of like beef oxo and stuff. Like I said, everything smells savory around here. I thought it was just me being, hey, this one's really, really meaty. No, I think we have to be realistic though. So what's the age on this? 28 years old. When
28.
this landed, I was a little bit indignant price. Man, come on, we were landing 93s all the time. They were incredible. But it is like, hey, I hate to break it to all you guys. If you bought tickets here because the 90s were where you grew up and that was your jam, we're old. These are old whiskeys now. This is a 28-year-old whiskey. The 90s aren't young anymore.
No.
So I don't think the price is as unreasonable as I was thinking first, especially for that style of sherry. They're just damn expensive nowadays and as rare as hen's teeth. I think this is still a great example. I just think we're holding it up to an era that is an era of the past and is not necessarily what we're seeing.
Kurt, this was not intended because you and I didn't plan this. People should know there's virtually no planning that goes into these tastings other than sorting the lineup, and then we just kind of wing it from there. But your comments make for a good segue because we quietly have a little deal on our website right now. The North Star GlenDronach 31 year, which used to be $2,800, is now $850 plus GST. So, you know, don't want to spend all your money for you, but if you'd like a slightly less expensive 1990s GlenDronach, that would be your option. Essentially, we got a deal to clean it out. So that might be worth taking a look at. It's not quite as sherried as this, but I think it has a really nice balance to it. Like we put it in a tasting like earlier in the year.
It was really good too.
Yeah. Because it was more
20 was ridiculous. We said that right off the bat. We were like, yeah, this is stupid. We tried it with Andy and we're like, yeah, we love it. Prices, it's like, that's it. $850 though is an absolute runaway steal. Like that's a fraction. It's beautiful. I think the 44 point whatever it is drinking strength is super comfortable. The fruit
Mhm.
tones are stunning. It's old school style whiskey.
Yeah. But you know that like I'm probably being too unfair to that GlenDronach, but the OB that we just tried. Because I had another sip and it's good. It's just yeah, I remember back when you could have six of those for the price of that one bottle right now. And yeah, if only we knew now, if we knew then what we know now, Kurt.
Yep.
Just think. Uh, one last whiskey, so I'll have one little bit of trivia here before we get to it. I will find another good one. There's some trivia on this list that are definitely not easy to find. I would love to know if someone actually knows the answer to this one. What was the name of the fictional town that Dawson's Creek was set in? I only watched a handful of episodes of that show. I could never answer that. But what
I assume that's the
town?
name of the place.
It wasn't Dawson's Creek because I think Dawson was the creek or something. He was like a river that ran through it, Kurt. All those people's lives, he was a river or a creek.
Okay.
That's a really tough question. The town's called Cape Side. I have zero inclination. How about this? This might be easier for a couple of you guys tonight. Um, what year was the World Wide Web first introduced to the public? This one is a bit surprising to me. But what year was the World Wide Web introduced to the public? No correct answers so far. Um, go earlier. We're not talking ARPANET, Tom. We're talking the World Wide Web. It was 1991, since no one had guessed that one yet. 1991 was the first year it was introduced to the public. All right, last whiskey before we go to the speed round. I'm excited about this one. I hope it holds up well because it's one of my favorite whiskeys in the shop. We are on to the Gordon MacPhail Ardmore 1997 KWM cask. So I guess this tasting was really an opportunity to pour the Bowmore and this, but we accompanied it with some pretty cool whiskeys. So 25 years of age, shockingly, I would say from a refill sherry cask, bottled at 50.3%. I have made a pretty bold statement about this one. I believe I've said multiple times that this is the best Ardmore I've ever had. And I did some sleuthing and some math, and I've determined that I've tried at least 100 Ardmores over the years. But yeah, I absolutely love this whiskey. Kurt, you?
I hate myself for how much I like this. Ardmore has never really been. Um, I will admit, more and more and more, the more we're seeing nice high age statement Ardmores coming out, kind of falling in love with the distillery. But yeah, Andrew, I 100% agree with you. This is definitely one of the best I've had. I love the ashiness. I love the smoke. I love that it's that cleaner smoke, not the
Mhm.
smoke style. I like the way it's faded, so the smoke is just a
Mhm.
clean note that's singing along with everything else. It's not pop or anything. This one kind of wows me.
Mhm. Tom's got a good note in there, which I definitely picked up on tonight. The menthol eucalyptus note. It reminded me of kind of like if you were to make a hybrid of an after eight dinner mint and an eat more, that's kind of what the nose was giving off to me, like this fresh, cool, minty note. But yeah, the eucalyptus menthol, I think, is a good call on that. The palate to me was, I mean, and I'm not a big cigar guy. I enjoy having a cigar every once in a while. I can definitely appreciate a good cigar, but the palate for me on this is like a really good cigar, something that's not too strong. It's got some nice flavor to it. It's balanced. The smoke is clean. Um, yeah. And this is going back in a different way from that Millstone. This is another side of that old school sherry.
Uh, the Millstone is kind of the one that thinking back to bygone eras, I would have drunk something like that at a rich
Mhm.
friend's place. This is more the whiskey that was maybe slightly closer to what I could afford. But this is a flavor profile I would chase way more. So, despite loving the Millstone, this I would want to drink way more regular. I
Mhm.
love that army smoke. And I love how clean it smokes too. It's, it's like white smoke. It's not dirty and billowy.
No, yeah, it's not a dirty medicinal smoke. It's a very clean smoke. Oh, look, Sue showed up. Nice of you to finally join us, Sue. Just kidding.
Oh, hey, by the way, Phil. Phil just had a milestone. Happy birthday, Phil.
Oh,
I think he
well,
turned 40.
40. Wow. Well done. Um, oh man, yeah.
Yeah.
Sue, you missed some great trivia or bad trivia. Either way, you missed some trivia. You probably could have helped with. Like, Sue, thumbs up or down. Do you know the town that Dawson's Creek took place in? Down. Okay. You know what? I kind of respect you more for not knowing the answer to that. If you did, I think, I don't know. It's kind of, for me, I'm like a Friends versus Seinfeld guy. Like, there's a correct answer and an incorrect answer as to which is the better show, and it's not Friends. But I'll just put that out there. Anything else about this Ardmore before we go to the speed round? I realize I just made an extremely controversial comment there, but
I'll take it a step further. Some of these guys have some explaining to do for the things they knew that fast in trivia
oh, I
too.
know. Hey, um, yeah. I mean, Seinfeld, probably some elements of it have not aged as well, but the humor, next level. No scotch for you indeed. All right, Kurt, speed round.
Good.
Okay, we're back to the Tomatin, 29 years old. Oh,
Creamier now. Be on the nose.
yeah, it's almost like French, or not French onion. It's almost like cream of mushroom soup at a distance. And they've put a little bit of olive oil in it to just give it a nice little fatty kick.
I'm relying on your nose so much more than mine. My palate is okay tonight, but the air in here is so off.
I think time has been kind to that. It's gotten fruitier to me on the palate. It's fresher. It's lost some of that rough edge that it had when we first went through. Either that or my palate has been anesthetized to it. But I like that a lot more than I did the first time around.
Agreed. Especially the mid palate. It was
Yeah.
all juicy and
Yeah.
whoa.
I wonder if Angus said anything about the finishings, elasticity, reading to eventual pleasurable plasticity. So whatever that means. Maybe he was on the herb when he wrote that one.
I
Uh,
think it might be stronger than herb.
yeah, might have. Benrinnes, 96.
Okay, now it's literally custard to me, like on the nose. I'm getting like bird's custard. Otherwise, very English.
It's
Love
a
that.
nice mix of like farmy and like going into a Cinnabon in the mall or just walking past the Cinnabon.
And again, I think time has been really good to that one. Palate is way better.
Well, yeah, really bright, lots of fruit, some nice spices, decadent. Yeah, those Benrinnes 1996 have so far from signatory yet to disappoint. Um,
Oh, speaking of oddball vintages like that, just to put a bug in people's ears, because this opened my eyes to the 96 Benrinnes. So I'm going to start hunting them because I heard what I said. Really. 87 Glenturret, 87 Glenturret signatory was in.
we had some really good signatory 87 Glenturrets. They were like kind of waxy and tropical, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, really.
All right, Dailuaine. The Dailuaine's like opening a jar of like chutney.
Nose is really nice. The palate, I'm actually getting some slightly corky notes. I don't know if it's just slightly degraded, but it actually tastes a little bit corky.
Does taste a little quirky. I mean, I think it might be more that meaty style that Dailuaine kind of has, and the fact that the cask influence is fairly light. But yeah, it does. It might even be faintly corked.
Not to get too esoteric, borrow a page out of Hunter's old playbook here, but you ever had to use your teeth to like pull a band-aid or anything like that, either the fabric or the plastic ones, kind of tasting
Hmm.
just a little bit of band-aid on the palate.
Okay, moving on. Bowmore 97. It just smells like it reminds me of going into like a coffee or like a lunch restaurant or something on island, like a place where you're gonna go and get soup and sandwich. Maybe they're burning a bit of peat in the fireplace.
It smells to me like going into Lucci's. You've been to Lucci's, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Bowmore Hotel, Dirty Hand Bar, everything. Um, the smell of this just takes me there. We were so lucky with this cask. Can't believe we got this.
Yeah. No, the palate is it's light, fresh, like very fruity with this nice, clean, earthy smoke, almost like a little bit of like forest moss on the palate. It's pretty. It's a lovely dram.
Great drinking strength too.
Sammy, there's some funny things in the chat. I wish I had time. I should really like record the chat so I can go through and read it afterwards, but who has time for that? Loving some of the sidebars in there. Kurt, for you, any other comments on that Bowmore?
Love it.
Yeah. All right. Linkwood 95. Oh, for me, it's kind of lost some of its luster. It's not quite as good as it was for me the first time around. It's still nice, but I'm getting kind of like a slightly burnt balsamic reduction on the palate now.
I'm actually finding I like it more the second time on the palate. The nose seemed a little bit shy, but I'm really digging the palate. And
Mhm.
I think maybe that might be the best balance of the night between nose and palate so far, where I'm getting both on both. It seems like very in sync.
It's less liquidy to me now, though, than it was the first time around, which I already said was not the most important factor. But yeah, loads of caramel, burnt sugar, like some chocolate tones. The finish is very nice. I just find it's like very kind of confined. It's like very one-dimensional.
I'll say what I said earlier. After sitting and having like a good stew or some kind of winter warmer meal, I want so
Mm. All right. Millstone, 1996, 25-year-old.
coffee and treacle and all kinds of stuff on the nose now for me. A lot of syrup.
The palate is so syrupy, loads of bright tropical fruit, some soft leather. Yeah. So I would, to you, I would say that I think the balance, I like the balance on that one even better than the Linkwood. Like I think from start to finish it, nice soft arrival, nice weight to it, good
It
flavors.
actually sits on the palate like, by the time it hits like 6 or 7 seconds, it's kind of like old port,
That is a
vintage
good
port.
note.
Um,
Oh,
that's really, it's a whiskey that I don't know if I've ever seen where 10 seconds, 15 seconds after you drank it, it actually tastes a lot better. The
mhm,
finish just keeps.
mhm. Jeff's saying so much coffee now, and that is definitely a good note too. All right. GlenDronach. Oh, and that Millstone now I'm getting like, I don't know, like pot stickers with that sort of dark, slightly sweet, like dipping sauce. All right, back to the GlenDronach. Man, it's even more beefy and meaty than it was before. It's like a slightly overcooked meatloaf right out of the oven.
It's slightly dumpy. I'm getting a kind of almost composty note in the nose,
Hmm.
a little bit in behind everything, almost like a dirty girl or something. But I think even the worst notes have oxidized away because it's still pretty beyond that weird off.
I mean, I think for me, my biggest knock on this would be that it tastes like sherry. It tastes like Oloroso sherry. Um, it's nutty. There's some nice fruit tones there. It tastes oxidized and drying. I like it, but for me, this is not a winner on the palate.
You know what I think on this one? I would bet that it wasn't showing quite well enough when it was a bit younger. That's why they left it longer. And then they realized that leaving it longer wasn't necessarily. So
Well, here's an interesting question for you, Kurt. Do you think this was a full-term maturation in the same cask, GlenDronach, or is this one that they re-racked?
that's a good question. I, yeah,
Oh,
that's a question. I don't know. I
they
would lean full maturation, but I don't.
so it's an Oloroso punch-in, which is the largest cask. I think those are like 600 liters. Um, they do have 677 bottles though. So I don't know. I mean, this could have been something that was refilled or re-racked into sherry when Billy bought the distillery in 2008, or some point after that. But to me, just yeah, I would be willing to bet that this is a finish, whether that's like a 5-year finish, a 2-year finish, or a 10-year finish, or a 16-year finish. We don't know. But to me, it feels like a bit over the top, kind of 1D again.
I'm kind of glad I didn't spend $1,200 on it.
Ardmore,
So awesome.
nose is elegant. Palate subtle. Again, nice clean smoke. It's chocolatey. Some nice nutty tones in there too. Some nice fruits. I think this one might have done a little better in the lineup if it had been actually put before the Linkwood. Like I think this one probably should have followed the Bowmore, because the sherry on it's not quite as like thick and like dark or deep as the other 3 whiskeys that preceded it.
It's so solid all the way through. Like
Mhm,
the nose through the arrival through the finish, everything about it.
mhm.
I want more of it.
Yeah, pretty tasty. Jeff says I'm iffy on the Ardmore, but this doesn't have the barnyardy Ardmore note I don't like. Sammy likes the barnyard note, but he says he's right, it's not here. Tom says this is very good to me. Um, anyway, Kurt, I think it's time for a poll. Assuming we have one, and we do. Evan has asked 4 questions tonight, so it'll be interesting to see what the additional questions are, what the bonus questions are. So we'll give you guys a couple of minutes to figure that out. In the meantime, Kurt, are you prepared to pick your top 3?
Man. You and I were chatting before we started recording, before we let everybody in.
Mhm.
Said that we were kind of looking forward to this lineup, fun lineup. Um, I looked at it as a really varied lineup and super interesting. I didn't expect it was. I'm kind of struggling, to be honest with you. I think I have to say number one. Oh man, it's so hard. I'm gonna give it just by a hair to the Bowmore, just because I love the palette.
Mhm.
But then the Ardmore is right behind. Seriously, 1-2. And then I think I might have to go with the Tomatin. I want to say the Millstone because I love the way it finishes, but I wouldn't drink nearly as much of it as I
Mhm. Okay.
would.
Ooh, yeah, it's a tough one for me. I really wanted to throw the Millstone in 2. I think the Millstone gets the honorable mention for me. That would be my number 4. Uh, but I'm going to go number 3, Benrinnes, number 2, Ardmore, and number 1, Bowmore. Um, for me, the Ben, like I really like that tomato, and I really like how it came alive after we opened it. But I think I prefer the that like slightly waxy honeyed note that's coming from the Benrinnes. So that one spoke to me a little bit more tonight. And the Millstone, I think for me, the reason it fell behind the Benrinnes and the Ardmore is it just as good as it is, and it's really good. I think with sherry, you run that risk of losing a bit of complexity if the sherry wine notes are too strong. And I think it's just slightly in that vein.
I
But
just finished my last sip of it though, and I would have to go back and bump it out, bump the tomato. So the
it's
palate is so down.
it's pretty damn good. But
The nose doesn't even hint at how good the palate is.
mhm.
Like, God, those fruit tones are.
I'm gonna stick with the Benrinnes for my third pick, even after trying the Millstone again, because the Benrinnes tastes like something I could drink regularly, whereas that Millstone I think I would get tired of. Like I would want something other than that syrupy, fruity, almost over the top style. But yeah, this was a tough one tonight. Solid lineup, as Tom said. Hard. Yeah. Kevin says, how can I go back to drinking regular whiskey now? It's a slippery slope, my friend. Once you start on that side of it, there's no stopping. Um, let's check on the poll here and see how the poll is doing. So all but one of you have voted. If you've not voted, I'll give you another minute here. Just checking in on Facebook. We haven't had any comments, although we have a couple of viewers there. You've got 1 minute left to vote on the poll if you're logged in, and then we're going to start sharing the results. Kurt, what else have we got coming up? Anything we should let people know about? MS Whiskey Festival in January. Tickets are on sale for that. If you're in the greater Calgary area or passing through on your way to Victoria, probably not convenient if you live in Victoria or on the island, but if you're traveling from somewhere further east, you might want to pop in and see us.
We are having so much fun in the shop. Panic, mad scrambling, building hot advent calendars.
Looking
Ren
forward
is
to
good.
that being done.
Yeah, so move quickly so we can stop building them. Buy your not advents now if you need to. Sick
Mhm.
lineup. But yeah, let's get it behind us. It's a lot of work.
Well, I'm going to drop a hint here. I'm not going to say which one, but actually, there's two. Two of the whiskeys in this lineup may or may not be in the calendar or the Advent tastings, I think is
Wait till January to find out how disappointed you are when it may not.
may not be. Yeah, may or may not. All right, here are the results. So the winner of first favorite is the Bowmore from Barry's, the Millstone coming in a very respectable second place. Third favorite is going to, it's a tie between the GlenDronach and the Ardmore. A little bit of a surprise there, but everybody, Kurt, it looks like got a vote except for that Tomatin,
Mm,
which is sad.
Great.
Little tear there. Worst earworm from a one-hit wonder during the 1990s. So Evan's done the trivia for us there. We've got Tub Thumping by Chumbawamba, Macarena, Lost Del Rio, Achy Breaky Heart. I don't know if it's fair to say that Billy Ray is a one-hit wonder. I mean, I'm not a fan, but
Name another song, Andrew.
well, didn't he have that Old Town Road one with Little Nas X? So
Now you have to explain it
that wasn't
too.
in the 90s, but like it was another hit. Uh Blue by David, oh, by Eiffel, and Oh God, now they're all stuck in my head. Okay. So the winner for that was the Macarena. I think that really was, in some ways, the most characteristic song of the decade and also possibly the worst. It's the one song I could do without ever hearing again, at least from that list. Although the Billy Ray song's pretty bad too. And then worst band from the 1990s that has like a zombie risen from the dead, and the answers are Oasis, 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 and Creed. But even though you could have voted for it 3 times, Creed is the winner there.
And Creed, right answer, because no worries, Oasis is going to be broken up before
Oh God.
into the anyways.
Well, I think people are only excited about them because they want the drama to continue and to see them self-destruct once more. So, um,
But you
what's
stay.
what's funny is like they were kind of, by the time we knew about them in Canada, they were only like months away from self-destructing, because I think after that one big album came out, they were pretty much done. They said they were bigger than Jesus, or no, they said they were bigger than the Rolling Stones, who themselves said they were, or was no, in Rolling Stone.
Beatles.
The Beatles said they were bigger than Jesus.
John Lennon
Oasis
said it.
claimed they were bigger than the Beatles, and then they famously self-destructed. So that's a classic example of hubris, if ever there was one. Well, listen, everybody, thank you for tuning in for tonight's tasting. I hope you enjoyed the lineup. It was a fun one. I don't think there were any disappointments in that lineup. A lot of things stood out. So hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully we'll see you for one of our other remaining tastings that are coming up, or for one of the Advent tastings coming up in December. But until then, everyone, I hope you have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon. So